Aloha, kakahiaka, good morning, and welcome to the Episcopal Churches of Western Kauai. This video is a short virtual service that includes today's gospel followed by a sermon. The churches of Western Kauai include St. Paul's, located in Kekaha, near Waimea. Our other church in Western Kauai is St. John's, located in Ele'ele, close to Honopepe. We have services in our churches now, and the churches follow the safety guidelines set forth by the state of Hawaii and the Episcopal Diocese of Hawaii. But some people still do not feel comfortable being around others because of the pandemic. Hence, this virtual service. Being a church does not require a building in order to be a church. What church does require is a community of believers who witness to love, compassion, joy, and the presence of God in their lives. We hope you will find those virtues here this morning in this very short online service. Good morning and welcome to the churches of Western Kauai. This morning is the 12th Sunday after Pentecost, and here's the gospel reading for today, and that'll be followed by a short sermon. This is from Matthew in the 16th chapter. When Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Thus ends the gospel, and thanks be to God. Aloha, and good morning to everyone at St. John's and Ele'ele. Today I'm going to talk about the keys of the kingdom you heard about in today's gospel. We'll trace what those keys meant in the early Christian church and what they mean today, a little bit different today. We'll look carefully at the notion of the keys as meaning the responsibility of the whole church, and also as personal responsibility. Today's gospel talks about an event in the life of Jesus that has caused quite a lot of speculation over the years. Jesus said, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven." Peter has been credited with becoming the leader of the movement that Jesus founded, and then his leadership passed on to his successors. Eventually, that leadership became known as the papacy, with claims of all authority on matters spiritual, and eventually with matters quite temporal, matters very earthly as well. So Christianity ran with those keys, tucked neatly in its knapsack, its backpack. That backpack eventually wound up in the city of Rome until October 31st, 1517. That's the alleged day a priest by the name of Martin Luther, an Augustinian monk, tacked up his 95 theses on the doors of a church in Wittenberg, Germany. Those theses were Luther's opinion about where the church had gone astray. The church called Luther and his followers heretics, but in the last number of years, Luther has been seen more as a hero, even by Catholic scholars, as their church opened windows under Pope St. John the 23rd and now under Pope Francis. By virtue of those keys being in just one place for 1,500 years, with the claim of absolute authority, did the Christian church do all the things that Jesus called for? When you think about the Inquisition, the Crusades, the index of forbidden books, the burning at the stake of those who dared to translate the Bible into the language of the people, and the interpretation of the infallibility of the Pope in the 19th century, well, one wonders. And I believe it is safe to say that on October 31st, 1517, the vault that contained those keys was opened. And when it was opened that day, lots of copies of those keys to the kingdom of heaven were made and distributed to all the churches that sprung from the Reformation. Which is the best church? Well, that's disputed. Earlier this year, I attended an ecumenical pastoral seminar in Texas. After the first day's conference, I was sitting in the hotel lobby just reading the newspaper, and I overheard 3 clergymen discussing which religion was the best. The Episcopal priest said, "Well, mine's the best. We've got women in the ministry now." And the Catholic priest said, "Ain't possible. Mine's the best. It's the biggest." And the Baptist minister said, "You're both busting out of your britches. Wrong. Mine's the best." And the other 2 asked, "Why?" And the Baptist preacher said, "Hey, after all, they didn't call him John the Presbyterian, did they?" And the challenges of each church are the same. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. But what does all that mean? What does it mean? What are the keys of which Jesus speaks? What is this binding and loosing stuff? For the majority of Christians in the world, the keys are not contrived doctrines and irrelevant church policies and practices and laws that sprung up later as absolutes and that confuse and separate Christians rather than lift them up to the glory of God. Instead, the keys are a metaphor for gospel teachings, the teachings of Jesus. And the metaphor continues. Those keys are to be proclaimed. Proclaim those keys, those messages of the gospel to the world by your words and your actions. And you will succeed in binding others to Jesus. Those who reject or loosen themselves from the teachings of Jesus and live a life outside the expectations and opportunities God has given to all of us. They've made their own choice about their life after death. As you can see, our responsibility is huge. Please never blow it, like the guy in this humorous story did that I'm going to tell you now. Seems that on a really busy street one day, a lady was being tailgated by a really stressed out guy. Well, the light turned yellow just in front of her, and she probably could have beaten the impending red light by flooring it. But she did the right thing. She stopped at the crosswalk. Now, the tailgating man was furious. He laid on the horn. He screamed and cursed in frustration, and he raised his middle finger. He had missed his chance to get through the intersection. He dropped his cell phone, his donut, and his cup of coffee. Well, while he was still ranting and raving, he heard he heard a tap on his window. And he looked up and he saw a very serious police officer. "Get out of the car, sir. Keep your hands where I can see them. Turn around and lay your hands on the hood of the car." So after the officer handcuffed him, he put him in the back of the police car and he took him to the police station where he was searched, fingerprinted, photographed, and he was placed in a holding cell. After a couple of hours, a policeman opened his cell door and he took the guy back to the booking desk, and the arresting officer was standing there with this guy's personal effects. He said, I'm very sorry for this mistake. You see, I pulled up behind your car while you were blowing your horn, flipping off the lady in front of you, and cussing a blue streak at her. Then I noticed the What Would Jesus Do bumper sticker, the Choose Life license plate holder, the Follow Me to Sunday School bumper sticker, and the chrome-plated Christian fish emblem on the trunk of your car. Naturally, I assumed you had stolen the car. Well, those of you who are lawyers may spot some probable cause issues here, and perhaps even a lawsuit against the city. And I'm sure that this never really happened. But how often have you and I compromised our Christian faith like that, and just not taken the responsibility for it that Jesus asks of us? One thing we can't do is leave this church this morning without realizing that the Episcopal Church carries a set of those keys. And even further, St. John's here in Ele'ele carries a set of those keys. And look in your wallet or your purse. You're going to find your own set of keys right there too. Why? Because when you walk out that door shortly, you are stepping into a world of people who want to know more than anything that there is a very loving and forgiving God right here with us. The institutions that are ingrained in our lives, such as schools, governments, politicians, Facebook, emails, Twitter, TV, and the abundance of protest groups, they can't do it. They can't do it. The keys our church has and the keys you have are the keys that Jesus gave to us so that we will use them to unlock God's grace and mercy and forgiveness to all people whom we encounter. Take those keys, those responsibilities, and really, really run. Just run with them. Amen. God bless you. Have a wonderful week.